Picking my top 10 books of 2024 was especially hard this year compared to years past because I read over 100 books, so the competition for those top 10 spots was bigger than ever. But I feel pretty good about the list, and I hope it sparks your curiosity to at least pick up one of these books yourself. Now, before I get to the list, I should qualify it by saying that I read books for mainly 3 reasons. Number 1, to become a better business owner, and number 2, to become a better citizen, and then number 3, to be a better person overall. Now, having said that, here's my top 10 list. Number 10, Bad Therapy: Why Our Kids Aren't Growing Up by Abigail Shrier. This book takes a really critical look at the current mental health trends impacting our youth. She argues that well-intentioned therapeutic approaches might actually be hindering the development of resilience and independence for our children. And I think it could really spark some important conversations about how we treat our youth. Now, I realize this is a bit of a weird book to make my list based upon the 3 criteria that I just shared. But here's the thing. I've dealt with depression myself, and I found that when I was reading the book, it started to shift some of the beliefs that I've developed over the years. And for that, it made the list. Coming in at number 9 is Before You Say Anything: The Untold Stories and Fail-Proof Strategies of a Very Discreet Speechwriter by Victoria Wellman. This book offers a really entertaining peek behind the curtain of a professional speechwriter. It's part autobiographical in her stories and then also part instructional with her strategies on how to craft an impactful and memorable speech. And as a professional speechwriter, her prose was amazing, and it made this book really hard to put down once I picked it up. At number 8, I've got Build: An Unorthodox Guide to Making Things Worth Making by Tony Fadell. This book is written by one of the best product designers of modern history. Now, I realize that's a bold claim, but I think I can back it up because he invented the iPod and the iPhone at Apple, and most recently created the Nest thermostat. And before all of that, he was the CEO of General Magic, which, if you are unfamiliar with that name, you must watch the documentary. I've included a link to the show in the description of this review. It is well worth watching. The book takes a very interesting journey. Like, at first I thought, man, this book is perfect for people in their 20s that are wondering kind of how to navigate the world of business. But as I kept reading it, I started to think this book is actually perfect for managers who battle with how to balance being the friendly manager to the firm manager. Then later, I started to think, man, this is actually the perfect book for business owners of fast-growing companies. And then later in the book, I thought, man, this would be great for anybody who's trying to consider private equity or exiting their company. Finally, I realized it. The title Build was also a description of the journey one takes when developing a world-class business. Number 7 is Secrets of Sand Hill Road: Venture Capital and How to Get It by Scott Cooper. This book pulls back the curtain on the world of venture capital. Cooper provides invaluable insights on how VC firms operate and what entrepreneurs need to know in order to secure funding. At number 6, I've got How Will You Measure Your Life by Clayton Christensen, James Allworth, and Karen Dillon. This book takes business principles and applies them to your personal life, and it provides a framework for making choices that lead to a fulfilling and a meaningful life. And it prompts, I think, really deep self-reflection. And my favorite part of the book had to be section 3, called Staying Out of Jail. Not sure what that says about me. Nonetheless, it's a very good section, and it has everything to do with the concept of living with integrity and avoiding unethical behavior, even when faced with just seemingly small, just this once temptations that could lead to larger moral compromises later down the road. And he shows how marginal thinking can lead to a loss of profits as well as a loss of integrity. What's the solution? It's what he calls full thinking. Coming in at number 5 is Negotiating from the Inside Out: A Playbook for Business Success by Clint Babcock. This book is broken into 3 parts. The first addresses the internal or mental side of selling, and he breaks people into 3 types of negotiators: the amateur, the tactician, and the strategist. And then he shows how to identify and respond to each one of them. Part 2 identifies 12 gambits that people use in negotiation to tip the scales into their favor. And this is when the book really just overflows with brilliance. And then part 3 lists all of the different ways that you can gain leverage in a negotiation. And it also talks about the most common mistakes that negotiators fall into and how to prevent them. At number 4, I've got How to Live: 27 Conflicting Answers and One Weird Question by Derek Sivers. This book is a quick read. Even for a slow reader, you could probably probably jam through it in less than a couple hours. It's a book with absolutely zero fluff and 100% content directly related to the title. The book's chapters read more like poetic vignettes than a long text self-help book. It's stoic in nature, but with a compassionate vibe that you might not get in traditional books written by the ancient Stoics. This book can be a bit of an emotional roller coaster too, because one chapter, it might be talking about, how to find the sense of humor in everything in life. And then the very next chapter, it might be talking about how to prepare for the worst things in life, right? And this, by the way, is not accidental either. It's not like he didn't have editors pointing out those conflicts. Instead, the hypocrisy from those chapter-to-chapter conflicts is an intentional subtext to force you to see the weirdness of life and how living with like a mono-idealistic position in life really just doesn't work. If you're not familiar with who Derek is, he was the founder of CD Baby, which became the world's largest distribution house for independent artists. And when he sold the company, I think it was back in 2008 for $22 million, he put all the money into a charitable trust for music education. And since his exit from the corporate world, he's become a modern day philosopher. And I recommend, by the way, reading all of his books, not just this one. Number 3 is The Canceling of the American Mind by Greg Lukianoff and Ricky Schlott. This book is sort of an extension to his previous book, The Coddling of the American Mind, which, by the way, also made my top 10 list a few years back, and I'll put the link to that book in the description below as well. This book, though, examines the rise of cancel culture, and although the authors don't feel that that term really covers everything in their book, it's a good starting point. Now, it looks at the phenomenon from both the left and the right, and if you read it, I can promise you, you're going to have a greater sense of compassion for humanity, and you know what? You just might think twice before you try cutting into somebody online. It is a very timely and important read. Coming in at number 2 is Founder versus Investor, The Honest Truth About Venture Capital from Startup to IPO. It's by Elizabeth Zalman and Jerry Newman. I rarely use the term must read, but if you are an entrepreneur with investors or seeking investment, this book is absolutely a must read for you. The contrast between how a founder sees a particular problem and how an investor looks at that same situation are highlighted masterfully in this book, because the authors take you through the entrepreneur journey from the startup to exit, and every step of the way, you'll hear first from Liz, the founder, and her views, then Jerry follows up with his opinions, and more than once they disagree and create a really entertaining banter between one another. I've never read a book where the co-authors so openly and frequently disagree with one another, but in a very playful and respectful way. Now, before I get to my number 1 book that outshined the other 100+ books that I read, I just want to say that if you enjoy this review, I think you'd really benefit from subscribing to my channel, because every week I release a business book review, so you'll never be short of a good read, or in some cases, you'll save time by avoiding a book that might be a waste of time. And if you would like me to create a personalized top 10 list of business books for you, you can always check out my Business Book Scorecard, a quick questionnaire that takes only a few minutes, and at the end of it, I'll give you a list of the top 10 best books for where you're at based upon the entrepreneur journey. You know, the reality is that any book can be a 5-star book if you read it at the right time. So why waste time reading books that might not apply to where you're at right now? I've already sifted through over 500 books to save you time and find the right books for where you are in the entrepreneurial journey. The link to the scorecard is in the description of this video. All right, now here it is, my number 1 book of 2024, The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz. This book offers brutally honest and practical advice for navigating the toughest challenges of being a business owner. He shares his own experiences and he provides really valuable guidance for any entrepreneur or leader, but I think it's especially powerful for founders that are experiencing their company growing faster than they can even keep up. All I can say about this book is buckle up for a rough ride. If you've ever read the book Shoe Dog, the autobiography of Phil Knight, you likely experienced feeling just how hard entrepreneurship can be. The book is just one hard challenge after another, and you keep thinking in the book that if he can just fix this one thing, it's going to get smoother, but it never does. And you really start to appreciate just how your ability to grow a company relates proportionally to your ability to handle and solve complex problems. The first 4 chapters of Hard Things reads just like Shoe Dog. It's an autobiography of Ben's rise in creating a billion-dollar tech company. And you feel his pain when after he solves one vicious problem, he gets hit with another problem and another one, and just over and over and over. But where this book differs from Shoe Dog is that from chapter 5 on, the book attempts to give you prescriptive ways to solve really hard problems that every business owner faces in scaling a company. The book addresses the really tough things in entrepreneurship, like how to handle layoffs with grace, or what do you do if somebody from your friend's company wants to come work for you, or how to know when somebody's promoted themselves beyond their skill sets, and why employees always misinterpret things from management. And he talks about things like balancing the needs of workers with the demands of the shareholders. Listen, if you're a business owner and you read this book, I promise you will love it. So there you have it. That's my top 10 books of 2024. What do you think? Did I miss a book? Please let me know in the comments what books you've enjoyed so we can all benefit. Some of the books this year came directly from people just like you recommending their favorite books in the comments section below. So until the next book review, let's both try a little harder to be a little better. Happy New Year.